Calling the tail a leg doesn't make it one. Likewise, calling a small group of partisan lawyers a Supreme Court doesn't make it one. There's nothing supreme about the six-pack of far-right-wing political activists who are presently soiling our people's ideals of justice by proclaiming their own anti-democratic biases to be the law of the land. On issues of economic fairness, women's rights, racial justice, corporate supremacy, environmental protection, theocratic rule, and other fundamentals, these unelected black-robed extremists are imposing an illegitimate elitist agenda on America that the people do not want and ultimately will not tolerate. Indeed, the imperiousness of the 6 ruling judges has already caused the court's public approval rating to plummet to a mere 38%, an historic low that ranks down there with Trump and threatens to go as low as Congress. This has led to a flurry of protests by the court itself, attesting to their honesty and political impartiality. The integrity of the judiciary is in my bones, pontificated Neil Gorsuch, who now stands accused of having lied to senators to win his lifetime appointment. We are not a bunch of partisan hacks, wailed Amy Coney Barrett, a partisan extremist jammed into the court in a partisan ploy by Trump in the last few hours of his presidency. Judges are not politicians, protested John Roberts, who became Chief Justice because he was a rabid political lawyer who pushed the Supreme Court in 2000 to reject the rights of voters and install George Bush as president. This is Jim Hightower saying, remember, in America, the people are supreme. We don't have to accept the rule by an illegitimate court. For reform, go to fixthecourt.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, between the Federal Reserve raising interest rates to create more unemployment and the Supreme Court dreaming up new laws attacking workers, you got to wonder, where do we go? I mean, look, Tuesday when the Supreme Court hears this case, this Glaciers case, the chilling effect across organized labor will be painful. Because again, as I said, the only power workers have is that to withhold their labor, to cross their arms and march their feet. And once you penalize that, once you basically criminalize that, wow. Now I look what's going on out on the West Coast, and there was a great story on Friday that we didn't get to. Amazon was in the process of firing a young woman who was a union activist organizer, and the workers all came together, wore signs, wore buttons, and she got back to work. It shows that solidarity works. And you know what they did? They threatened to strike if they didn't replace it. This is the kind of stuff that scares the you-know-what out of corporate America. And here to share some thoughts on what it took and maybe share some of the details that I'm missing. I've asked my good friend Randy Corrigan to come talk with us. Randy is the president, or the secretary treasurer and principal officer at Teamsters Local 1932. Randy, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rick. I appreciate it. Always make time for you guys.
So walk me through what happened with Sarah Fee and Amazon. Walk me through, was she fired? Was she put on administrative leave? What's the story there?
She was put on administrative leave after a very minor conversation with a union avoidance individual, union buster, essentially, at the Amazon facility that she works at there in San Bernardino. And they put her on administrative leave pending, obviously discipline and termination. And this is the same group many may have read about that went on strike in October, walked off the job in August. I have had, direct action after direct action, withheld their labor in very strategic fashion to prove to Amazon that they're valuable and that their work is valuable in the area. And they obviously all rallied behind Sarah in that particular situation. And she was put back to work on Friday.
Now, that is a huge victory and a sign of solidarity and something that had to scare the you-know-what out of Amazon and really, shocks across corporate America, because if working people can show that kind of solidarity and stand together, the pitchforks may come out at some point, and while the wealthy not thrilled about it, which is why, this Supreme Court case that's going to be heard on Tuesday is so important, because if this case goes the way I believe it will, one of the tools that would have been used to help get Sarah back to work would be off the table.
Yeah, it clearly shows that once again, corporate America is using the judicial system, the National Labor Relations Act, to try to obviously restrict workers' ability to use what power that they have. And it's just a reminder that we shouldn't be depending, we being workers and obviously advocates for working people, shouldn't be dependent upon that system, that we need to encourage more and more workers to do exactly what these workers did in San Bernardino, these Amazon workers did around Sarah, which is, if you do this, we will do that. And that is very clearly saying this direct action that we are going to engage in is going to, we're doing it as for solidarity and to send a message that an injury to one is an injury to all. And so I hear what you said. I slightly disagree in a sense that I don't think it's the end of the world, and here's why. I think it's terrible. I think it's disgusting. I think that they're going to go that way. I think that we have seen the Supreme Court. We've seen what the laws have done in the last 40 years. And I think it's a constant reminder to us that we have to literally get back to more direct action that actually created the law to begin with.
Right.
That, what created the Wagner Act was this sort of activity and this sort of action of workers engaging. And then finally, Commerce said, okay, we got to come up with a fair set of rules for workers. And I think that I agree with you. I think that the Supreme Court is going to work against us on this and make it punishable, something that was normally preempted by the National Labor Relations Act. Why would they even entertain this? This is something that the Supreme Court should just bounce and say, we're not going to hear it. It's preempted under the National Labor Relations Act. Of course, they're going to hear it because we know that that's what we're getting with the Supreme Court. But it's also a reminder that workers have to do more of what these workers did when they surrounded themselves around Sarah, and that is to take direct action. Will corporations fight back? Sure, they will. And so we're going to have to, do more and more of this. And workers are ready to do this. We're seeing this, in lots of places all over the country where workers are willing to take this sort of action.
No, I'm with you, but and I'm curious where you disagree with me. But if this goes the way I think it is, and they use this as a tool to go after workers and their organizations, financially, to go after, first it's going to start with, we lost some cement or we lost some produce. And eventually, they're going to go after lost profits and future profits and all kinds of things, or just to get you guys spinning your wheels, spending money on legal fees and all of that. So I just see this as an attack tool to suppress strikes, but I'm curious where you disagree.
I agree that it's an attack tool as you described it, but where I disagree is I don't think it should scare labor, nor should I think that it should slow us down from encouraging workers to withhold their labor. I think that maybe do we have to be a little bit more guarded in how we're doing it, but we absolutely should accelerate the fact that we're doing it. And if the Supreme Court rules in which we think the way they are, that is a reason to accelerate these issues and to say, and to do and have more direct action and say, well, you're going to do this. Guess what we're going to do as a result of it? We're going to create more disruption as a result. We're going to withhold our labor more and more because you guys are just trying to tighten the belt on us legally. That's the part I disagree in.
No, I know how it should go, but my fear is it becomes a chilling effect because of now we're going to act defensively. We got to worry about, hey, can the coffers, can we afford it? Are we going to end up going broke? That's my concern, is that I know it will have a chilling effect.
Well, hey, you bring up a great point, and I think, as a principal officer myself, it's something that you've got to balance, right? How much the legal cost going to be? Well, there's a point where if we keep being scared in the labor movement into a corner on this stuff, then we're afraid to do anything. We've been paralyzed by a lot of this stuff in the last 50 years, and it's created a space of being inactive. And so, it's almost like, keep being paralyzed. Then there's going to be nothing left, or Let's get to work. Let's spark direct action. Let's move some workers into the street, and let's take control of whatever industry needs to be taken control of by doing it in the way that that built the industry to begin with.
No, could this be a moment though? I know I say this every time there's another attack, another cut, another death of 1,000 paper cuts. That is this the one that makes people finally go, this is a bridge too far, and does what you're talking about, more direct action, more people waking up to the reality that, we've been getting screwed for 40 years.
I think you know, sometimes you don't ever know what that breaking point is. If you go back in history and you see when general strikes happened, or, when moments in time were created, they were not predictable. And I don't think this one's predictable either. It's another layer that's getting stacked on the situation to what you just said. In other words, it's another thing that's happening where workers are going, how many times are you going to cut out my feet from underneath me? And it brings people closer to resolution on what they need to do, and to not depend on, let's say, the National Labor Relations Act or the Supreme Court to bail them out, or any system like that. What we know in this country that's worked for over 100 years is workers depending on one another, workers in solidarity, doing what they have to do. And when you don't break that down, you're typically going to win.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of this, I wanted to get your thoughts. Is there a possibility, if this goes the way that I think we both believe it will, that this would work to the advantage of workers, that they could sue corporations for damages? Look, you got fired illegally, you got fired unjustly, you got put out, for one reason or another. Could you sue them for punitive damages outside of lost wages? Because this is basically what this case is saying.
I would say absolutely. Remember, if you're going to live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. And if you're going to take away the preemption on an issue, then the flip side of that preemption works on the side that you just pointed out. Absolutely, we need to press that issue, right? But not depend on it. What we need to depend on is that worker solidarity, and that, once again, direct action over and over again over the last 100 years is what has driven good policy. Not waiting on someone to create some good policy. It's really been some sort of direct action, then created a response from government or elected officials or commerce or whomever it was, and then they enacted a policy to deal with whatever that direct action was. And I think that it just puts us closer to that space. And clearly, I agree with you. I think we should immediately challenge it. On the flip side, no different than challenging right to work, the way you can challenge right to work and allow a state to have card check recognition. And if you're going to allow this preemption to exist, and that's where the Supreme Court's got a slippery slope here. It's probably fair to say that they're going to have a narrow ruling in here, because the wider they rule in a negative space, the better our argument is to wipe away some preemptions we want wiped away.
Yeah, my fear in this, Randy, is, as we said a moment ago, really or as I said a moment ago, the only true power a worker has is the right to fold their arms and march their feet, to withhold their labor. We've seen in Illinois, for instance, where teachers were threatened with having their license pulled if they dared quit a job. I fear we're going to head to a point to where leaving employment, stopping work, withholding your labor will become so costly that we end up getting into horrible conditions that people can't get out of, and under the guise of a legal structure. That's what's concerning to me.
I think that's a good fear, and I think that any confrontation or situation that we get into in the future, we should always balance that and respect that and understand that there is the possibility for the end result to be an employer taking the extreme position and you having to deal with that. But also, we can't be driven into a situation where we decide to allow the fear of that to prevent us from making it happen. I do fear, though, that labor leaders, and I'll say it, labor leaders that are too restricted by the legal sort of menagerie of the system, and kind of sometimes afraid of their own shadows, that fear will paralyze part of what we do. I think that, let's be real, Rick, that is there. There's a lot of elected individuals that sometimes you're convinced not to do things because there's every reason why not to do it versus looking at the reasons to do it.
Yeah, good point.
And you and I have talked about this subject before many times in the past, and I think that this is one of those moments where, again, direct action, and it is an attack on direct action. So I guess we got to take it square on, right?
Yeah, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Randy Corrigan. He's Teamsters Local 1932 Secretary, Treasurer, and Principal Officer. You can check out their website, teamsters1932.org. We'll get links out on social media. I got an email from Brian in Chicago listening on WCPT AM 820 who asks about the UPS, possibility of a UPS strike and what it would mean for workers there if this were to go into effect. And, I've had this question come up a bunch of times about, if there is a strike, and I'm not advocating for one, we don't know what's going to happen yet. They're at the table, obviously. Nobody wants it to happen, but it's an arrow in the quiver. But I don't want this to be one of those things that would have a chilling effect. I'm curious if you have a thought.
I do. I think that, in some circles, it'll argue that it limits. In others, I think that it's going to be full steam ahead. And I think that we have to approach this, and specifically with UPS, there's obviously a lot of buildup around that contract right now. There's a lot of changes that have happened in that industry in the last decade. You work in that industry in the last 2 decades. It's shifted tremendously. The transportation industry, the goods movement system, LTL, package, freight, all of that stuff. And I think that the buildup around the awareness on this contract for July, the employer will try to use this as a tool, as a chilling effect with the membership. And hopefully what happens is the membership see right through that, recognize that you have the right to do that. I personally believe that this union will make very good decisions when it comes to that subject, and we will make sure that we move in the right direction. There's a lot of elected officials within the union itself that are connected clearly to something this large with more than 300,000 of our members connected to it. And how do I think it's going to affect us? I think that we just have to deal with whatever that decision is. And when the decision comes down, we got to make sure we're as creative as possible to make sure that we have the right to withhold our labor when the time is right.
Yeah, ultimately, while we're talking about withholding your labor, that's a worker-centric position. I look at Amazon, who seems to be moving in a direction of everyone being their own boss and being a gig worker, being an independent contractor, which is another issue that I think we have to deal with. And it's something that I think, the right and there are people in our political system very happy to move in that direction. I'm curious the movement towards getting those people as employees and fighting back, especially when you're talking about UPS, because as Amazon is growing their delivery system, they're doing it with a gig model.
Yeah, and these corporations dumping their responsibilities, whether they be on independent contractors or contractors that are handling the delivery of product and our third-party operations, is proliferated massively in the last 3 decades. That expansion of the industry operating that way has led to higher injuries. It's led to higher turnover. It's led to a number of things, including higher profits for these companies in the industry, which ultimately is what everybody's looking at. And they're not they're not taking value in the workforce itself.
Yep.
As a result, you have a frustrated workforce. That's why 70% of the population wants to be in a union today, as the polls clearly show, because employers have not taken care of their workforce, and they have devalued the importance of that job and basically almost looked down upon individuals that are doing this hard work their entire career. And basically, you're not worth, you don't have the value to be able to retire in dignity or have great health care or be able to provide for your family or just have a very simple middle class lifestyle. So
that's why I think the organizing going on around Amazon, the organizing going on around places like Starbucks, the UPS contract, I think, is so important. I think these things are so important that we've got to stay up on them and fight in a direction that makes lives better and keep hammering that message. The one that I got as a young kid: union job, better life. It's that simple for me.
Yeah, and we need to get back to that. We need to make sure that our awareness, first of all, it's our responsibility as union members ourselves to be positive about our organization. And obviously the trajectory of life being a union member is completely different than being non-union. That responsibility falls on all of us. And we've failed the last couple generations, have not done a good enough job of making sure that the new generation coming in understands it at the right level. That, number two, making sure we're engaging with the community, making sure we're building the right partnerships, making sure that we're going to city council meetings and school board meetings, and we're building very robust relationships inside of our natural community that we live and work in, so that there's familiarity with the union and the environment in which it provides, versus it just being some obscure thing that corporate America talks about.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right, Randy. I appreciate the time, the thoughts. Good on you guys for getting out there organizing. Good on the people at Amazon for standing up and fighting for Sarah Fee. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you for having us on.
Good stuff. Randy Corrigan, Principal Officer, Secretary Treasurer there at Teamsters Local 1932. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You'll listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Do national security concerns outweigh the right of workers to form a union? That question was being debated on this day in labor history. The year was 2003. The head of the Transportation Security Administration, James Loy, made the case that collective bargaining would be an impediment to the war on terrorism. He signed an order that prohibited unionization by passenger and baggage screeners. The move was just one of several that eroded federal workers' rights in the name of national security in the aftermath of 9/11. The TSA was founded in the months after the 9/11 attacks by the Bush administration. Prior to the TSA, screening was done by private contractors run by the airlines. With the new organization, more than 45,000 screeners became part of the federal workforce. Massachusetts Senator Teddy Kennedy disagreed with the Bush administration's position that these workers could not join a union. He released a statement saying, "It's not Homeland Security, it's union busting." The TSA workers did not give up their fight to join a union. For the better part of a decade, they continued to organize and make their case. In 2011, the workers voted to become part of the American Federation of Government Employees. It was the largest union election by federal workers in United States history. There are limitations to the union, however, such as the screeners cannot go on strike, but the union can advocate for safe and fair workplace conditions. When the union was finally recognized, President of AFGE John Gage issued a statement. He declared, "Today marks the recognition of a fundamental human right for 40,000 patriotic federal employees who have been disenfranchised since the inception of the agency. Today, nearly 16,000 screeners have joined the union." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You know that frame, union job, better life. You know, as a young kid, I got that front and center because, like I said, in the past, the neighbor got a union job at Ford, and immediately their lives got better. Food at the end of the month. Kids had better clothes. They got secondhand bikes. Eventually got a secondhand car. Eventually moved out of the projects altogether. But right in front of your very eyes, you saw their lives get better. Union job, better life, simple. And we're at a moment right now. This is an interesting time. That UPS contract that we talked about in the last segment, there's an opportunity. And there's an opportunity for the Teamsters and Sean O'Brien, the new president, to really recreate what a middle-class job, a prosperous middle-class job looks like. There's an opportunity to put Sean O'Brien's name up there next to Jimmy Hoffa, or even past Jimmy Hoffa. When my grandparents were in the work world, Jimmy Hoffa negotiated the National Master Freight Agreement, which created a made truck driving jobs a solidly upper middle class job, professionalized the industry. And over the years, through bad policy deregulation, through horrible attacks on organized labor, what was once a very prosperous industry is now, just another job. O'Brien has the opportunity to put himself up there on the mantle with Walter Reuther and Hoffa and Murray and John L. Lewis and the rest of them, by delivering a contract that's going to ensure that every person makes a living wage. One of the things that UPS did during the pandemic that's disgraceful is they were paying their inside people, the people who load the package cars, the 4-hour casuals that come in, the armies of the 4-hour workers that they've got, the part-timers. They were paying them like $24 an hour to get them to come in during the pandemic. And then when the pandemic ended, they dropped them back to $14 an hour. And Friday you're working for $24. Monday they snatched $10 an hour from you. And it was one of those things where that's a reasonable, respectable wage. And what the unions, from what I'm told, is doing is, look, you can afford this. UPS had a couple $1 billion in stock buybacks. When you stop and think about the billions of dollars they spent on stock buybacks, what kind of raises, what kind of wealth could have gone to the working people who created that wealth? And O'Brien's a fighter. He's a guy, from what I'm told, he's a fighter. He's going to get in there and he's going to fight for it. And make the lives of those workers better. The argument's been for too long UPS has had it easy, and O'Brien, from what I'm told, the guy who's going to right the ship, going to fix the problems that have been there for so long. And this contract is how you do this, because the membership is there. The membership wants it. I have not seen this kind of energy around a leader in the years that I've been a member. Haven't. Maybe when James R. Hoffa took over, there was that energy at the beginning. This is an interesting moment. Going to be interesting to see what this summer brings to us. You got the UAW contract, you got the freight companies contracts are up, and the big UPS. There's an opportunity to revive the middle class, the working class of this country. And people like Sean O'Brien are the guys who are going to lead that. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk.